Everyone knows that certain actors get typecast, and this isn't such a bad thing either. Some actors are just so good at portraying a certain type of character that it almost becomes criminal in a sense not to use them for certain roles. Take Arnold Schwarzenegger for example. This man became a Hollywood legend, and rightly so, for playing the hulking action hero. Typically speaking, if you've seen one Arnold Schwarzenegger film, you've seen them all. But because he did that type of role so brilliantly, you never felt like it was a chore to watch him on the big screen. But what always interests me is when an actor takes a step outside of their comfort zone, when they see an opportunity to go against the grain and showcase their range and say, yes, that's me and this is what I can do. And Tom Cruise does exactly that in Michael Mann's action thriller Collateral. In this movie, Tom Cruise plays the character of Vincent, a cold, calculating and ruthless hitman who arrives in LA with a very strict mandate to assassinate 5 key people who are about to take the stand against a drug cartel, and he only has one night to complete his contract. To help him achieve this, he hires Max, an LA cab driver played by Jamie Foxx, to drive him around the city from one target to another. He tells Max that he's in the property business and that he's in town to close on a big deal. But this illusion is shattered when the very first hit goes wrong and Max is swiftly introduced to Vincent's true profession. Michael Mann is no stranger to LA. Like with his other crime thriller Heat, he expertly and stylishly places this city firmly centre stage. He frames it and captures it so well that LA becomes a leading role in its own right. He brings out the very best and the very worst from it, making it both a glamorous and enticing place to want to be, while also showing its seedier and more dangerous side. He also decided to shoot a lot of this movie on digital, claiming that this format would best suit the low lighting they would be getting from the city streets, and looking at how it turned out, this was a brilliant idea. The streets at night have this certain look to them thanks to this decision, and I think it just wouldn't be presented as well if these scenes were shot on film. And speaking of which, this film is very well shot. Lots of wide angles, no annoying shaky cam during the action scenes, and it's edited together really well. For the most part anyway, but I'll discuss that a little later. But let's look at the performances from our main characters, Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx. I said before that Cruise is typically typecast as the hero/good guy for the most part, but when he does get that rare opportunity to play the villain, he does it very well. His character Vincent is a force to be reckoned with. He has laser focus on the job at hand and is able to completely take control of the situations he finds himself in. He is unshakable and takes charge with whatever is thrown his way. Cruise clearly did a lot of prep for this role. The way he moves through crowds, the way he handles his tools of the trade, it all comes together to make you believe he could actually be this deadly assassin. Jamie Foxx as Max is the antithesis of Vincent. He's shy, he lacks confidence and hardly ever stands up for himself. He has a big dream of owning his own limo company someday, but it becomes very clear that a dream is all it will ever be. After the characters meet, after certain dialogue is exchanged, and after Max finds out just who Vincent actually is, we are left with two certainties. Vincent sees Max as weak and subordinate and believes he has total control over him, and Max sees Vincent as a monster, a nightmare that he has no hope of ever defeating. But this is where the genius of the film begins to shine. As the movie goes on, these characters start to discover more and more about each other. While Max is repulsed and horrified by Vincent's continued actions, he can't help but absorb some of Vincent's key personality traits. He begins to stand up for himself more, and realises that maybe he is braver than he gives himself credit for. And more importantly, Vincent starts to see that maybe Max isn't quite the pushover he expected him to be. But even though there are a lot of tension between the two, Vincent, in his own way, tries to help Max with his personality struggles. He makes him stand up to his asshole boss, makes him try and understand that life is a fragile thing, and that if you want something out of your life, you should just go after it without any hesitation. And he also forces him to wake up to some uncomfortable truths about his existence. The dynamic between these two is definitely not to be sniffed at, and Jamie Foxx more than holds his own in the acting arena in this film. I also can't forget to mention key performances from Jada Pinkett Smith and Mark Ruffalo here too, with Ruffalo playing Detective Fanning, hot on the heels of Vincent, trying to prevent any further murders being carried out, and Pinkett Smith playing Prosecutor Annie, who's working the case against the cartel in question. Both characters help to break up the one-on-one we get with Cruise and Fox for the most of the movie, but they never feel like they are taking us away from their dynamic at all. And to be honest, there isn't much of this film I can complain about, but there is one part of this movie that just felt off, and that's the nightclub scene. And it's not that the scene itself is terrible or anything, but the editing of this particular scene leaves a lot to be desired. There are a lot of continuity errors in this part. In one shot, everyone's running around panicking and trying to get out of danger, but in the next, everyone's dancing around as if nothing's happened. And there's a couple of characters that literally just flat out disappear and we never see them again. As for the pacing of it, it just feels a little clunky. It sets up for an all-out fight, but the scene just feels like it's struggling to find its momentum, making it feel very stop-start for most of it. It just irritates me that the target in question just sits in his VIP booth for the whole scene, when clearly someone is there to kill him. The scene only seems to find its feet in the closing part, when finally the action ramps up to 10 and Vincent puts his final stamp on the chaos with deadly style. But all in all, Michael Mann crafted an excellent crime thriller / action film which can sit proudly next to his other masterpiece, Heat. His direction, combined with the script and the acting powerhouses of our cast, make for a terrific film, especially if this genre floats your boat. It's definitely worth watching if you haven't seen it already.